It was a cold evening in Silicon Valley when Sundar Pichai sat alone in his quiet office at Google headquarters. The glass walls reflected the glow of city lights, but inside, the silence felt heavy. Papers were scattered on his desk, contracts, waiting for his signature, and a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing with calls he wasn't ready to answer. Sundar had always been known for his calm and humble nature, for his ability to listen before speaking, and for his deep respect for both his work and the people around him. But tonight something was different. He looked at the framed photo of his family on his desk, his wife and children smiling in the sunlight, and for the first time in years, he felt torn apart inside. The world saw him as the CEO of one of the biggest companies in history, a man with influence, money, and power beyond imagination. But the world didn't know the truth of what he was facing now. Earlier that day, Sundar had received 2 calls, both life-changing, both demanding his presence, both impossible to ignore. The first call had come from his company's board. There was an emergency meeting scheduled for the next morning, one that would decide the future of Google. A massive scandal was about to explode, and only Sundar could guide the company through the storm. Billions of dollars, millions of jobs, and the reputation of the company rested on his shoulders. But then, just hours later, his phone rang again. It was his mother, her voice trembling in a way he hadn't heard since childhood. She told him his father had collapsed back home in India. The doctors said he needed immediate surgery, and the family wanted Sundar by their side. His mother's last words before hanging up were soft but carried a weight that crushed his heart. "Sundar, your father keeps asking for you." Now he sat in his office, staring at the 2 paths in front of him. One demanded he stay in California, leading his company through one of the biggest crises in tech history. The other demanded he fly across the world to hold his father's hand in what might be his final moments. Sundar knew that whatever choice he made, the world would have something to say. People would judge him as a CEO, as a son, as a husband, as a man. His thoughts drifted back to his childhood in India, the tiny apartment where he and his brother shared one small room. He remembered the evenings when his father would sit on the floor, explaining the wonders of technology and saving every rupee to buy Sundar his first book on engineering. He remembered his father's sacrifices, how he rode a bicycle for miles, to work so Sundar could one day have opportunities he never had. Without his father's sacrifices, Sundar knew he would never have made it here. But then his mind snapped back to the present. Google was more than just a company. It was a global machine, a source of jobs, innovation, and technology that billions depended on. If Sundar walked away in this moment, would everything collapse? Would millions of employees lose hope, lose faith, and lose their future? He closed his eyes, his heart pounding, and whispered to himself, "How can I choose?" The night dragged on and Sundar didn't move. Every few minutes his phone lit up with another message, some from his mother, some from the board, all reminding him of the impossible decision. The weight grew heavier until it was almost unbearable. At that moment, his wife Anjali quietly stepped into the office. She had been watching him struggle in silence for hours. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder and he looked up, his eyes tired, his soul torn apart. "You can't be in 2 places at once," she whispered. "But you must decide where. Your heart truly belongs tonight." Her words cut through him like a blade. The choice was no longer about what was right or wrong. It was about who he was, what he stood for, and what he valued most deeply in his life. As the clock struck midnight, Sundar finally stood, his face pale but his eyes filled with determination. He picked up his phone, took a deep breath, and began to dial. But just before the call connected, something happened that changed everything. Sundar froze as his phone buzzed in his hand. His thumb hovered above the screen, the call to his mother, still unsent. His breath caught when he read the message again. "If you choose wrong tonight, you will lose everything." The words burned into his mind, sharp and unsettling. For a man who had spent his life making calculated decisions, leading teams of thousands, negotiating billion-dollar deals with a calm voice, this was different. This wasn't business. This wasn't strategy. This was personal. Someone knew about his dilemma, and someone was warning him or threatening him. His wife Anjali leaned closer, noticing the change in his face. "What is it?" she asked softly. Sundar hesitated before showing her the screen. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence grew heavier, filled only by the faint hum of the city outside. Who could know about his private struggle? Only a handful of people were aware of both the crisis at Google and his father's condition. Anjali whispered, "Sundar, this isn't just about choosing between your family and your company anymore. Someone is watching you." Sundar's heart raced as he thought about the possibilities. Was it a journalist trying to create a scandal? Was it someone on the board trying to manipulate him? Or was it someone closer, someone who wanted to see him fall apart under pressure? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he couldn't let fear dictate his next move. He sat back down at his desk, forcing his mind to think clearly. Sundar had always believed in solving problems by breaking them down piece by piece. But this was no simple equation. If he chose to fly to India, he would risk being blamed for abandoning Google in its darkest hour. If he stayed, he might lose his last chance to see his father alive. And now, with this mysterious message, it seemed like whichever choice he made would come with consequences far greater than he had imagined. His phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. "Your decision will be remembered forever. Choose wisely." Sundar felt a chill run down his spine. He had handled political pressure, market collapses, and brutal competition from rivals like Apple and Microsoft. But this was different. This felt like someone had entered the private space of his soul and placed a ticking clock in his hands. Anjali squeezed his hand. "Listen to me. You have always been the kind of man who never forgets where he came from. Your father gave up everything so you could have this life. Don't let fear or threats make this choice for you. Ask yourself, what would he want you to do?" Her words struck deep, and suddenly Sundar remembered the many nights of his childhood when his father would sit with him under the dim light of a kerosene lamp, encouraging him to dream beyond the walls of their tiny home. His father had always told him, "Success is nothing if you forget your humanity." Just then his office phone rang, the landline that very few people ever used. Sundar hesitated before answering. On the other end was Rajiv, his closest friend, from India, almost like a brother. His voice was urgent. "Sundar, you need to come. Your father is asking for you again. He keeps saying your name. Please don't wait too long." Sundar closed his eyes, feeling his chest tighten. He wanted to say yes, he wanted to drop everything and leave, but before he could respond, Rajiv added something that shook him to the core. "And Sundar, be careful. There are people here asking questions about you. Strangers, they don't seem like family friends. They're watching your family house." The words left Sundar speechless. It wasn't just his decision being weighed against time. It seemed forces he couldn't yet understand were circling both his family and his company. He ended the call and turned to Anjali. "This is bigger than I thought," he said quietly. "It's not just about my choice, it's about someone wanting me trapped." Anjali's eyes filled with fear, but also with resolve. "Then we fight back. But first, you must decide what matters most to you. You can't protect everything at once, Sundar. No human can." Sundar stood and walked to the window. The city lights shimmered like stars below, yet he felt like he was standing on the edge of darkness. He thought about his employees who looked up to him, about his family waiting thousands of miles away, and about the unknown person sending those messages. He wondered if his entire life of balance between humility and ambition, family and work, was about to shatter in one irreversible moment. His phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't the mysterious number. It was a video call from his mother. His trembling hands accepted it, and there she was, her eyes swollen from crying. "Sundar," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, he is weak. He keeps asking for you, and I don't know how much time we have left." Behind her, Sundar caught a glimpse of his father lying on a hospital bed, tubes and machines surrounding him. His once strong frame looked fragile, and the sight tore Sundar's heart apart. Amma, Sundar whispered, fighting back tears. I want to come right now, I will be there. But as he said those words, the office door opened suddenly, and one of his senior advisors stepped in without knocking. Sundar, you cannot leave, the advisor said firmly. If you walk away, now the company might not survive the storm tomorrow. They'll use your absence as proof you've lost control. The board is already whispering about replacing you. If you go to India now, you may not have a company to come back to. The air in the room grew heavy, as if all the oxygen had been stolen away. Sundar looked at his mother's tearful face on the screen, then at his advisor's determined expression, and then at his wife, who stood silently at his side, her eyes pleading for him to follow his heart. He realized in that moment that whatever choice he made, something would break. Either his company would crumble, or his family's faith in him would, and deep inside he feared that the unknown threat behind those messages would make sure he lost both. Sundar's voice trembled as he finally spoke. I can't. But before he could finish his sentence, the lights in his office suddenly flickered, then went out, plunging the room into darkness. His phone screen went black, cutting off the video call with his mother. And in the silence that followed, a single sound echoed through the office. 3 sharp knocks on the glass door. The 3 knocks echoed in the darkness like thunder, each one carrying a weight that sank into Sundar's chest. His office, usually filled with light and movement, now felt like a cave, shadows stretching across the glass walls. The emergency lights cast a faint red glow, painting the room in an unsettling shade. Sundar's pulse quickened as he stared at the blurry outline of the figure standing outside. Anjali clutched his arm tightly, her whisper trembling. Sundar, who is that? The advisor stepped forward, his voice firm but uneasy. Stay back, sir. Let me check. He moved cautiously toward the door, but before his hand could touch the handle, the shadowy figure raised a phone and pressed it against the glass. The screen lit up with a message written in large, bold letters. Decide now. The sight made Sundar's stomach twist. This was no coincidence. Whoever stood outside knew about the impossible choice tormenting him. They weren't just sending texts anymore. They were here, physically, at the very heart of Google headquarters, confronting him directly. Anjali whispered again, her grip tightening on him. This is not safe. You need to get out of here. But Sundar shook his head. If I run now, they'll know I'm afraid. I can't let fear control me, not tonight. The advisor opened the door slightly, his voice raised. Who are you? What do you want? The figure didn't step inside. Instead, they slid a small envelope through the gap, then turned and walked away into the hallway, disappearing before anyone could follow. The advisor rushed after them, but when he returned minutes later, his face was pale. They're gone. No trace. It's like they vanished. Sundar took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in neat, deliberate strokes. Choose your company, and your family will suffer. Choose your family, and your company will fall. Either way, the world will see who you truly are, Anjali gasped, covering her mouth. The words cut deeper than the earlier messages. This wasn't just pressure, this was a direct threat. Whoever was behind this wanted Sundar trapped, broken, destroyed from both sides. Sundar sank into his chair, his mind spinning. All his life he had believed in balance, in leading with kindness and humility. But this was a trap with no honorable escape. His thoughts returned to his father. He could almost hear his weak voice calling his name from the hospital bed. The image tore at him, reminding him of the man who had sacrificed so much, who had raised him with values of integrity and respect. And then, just as quickly, his mind shifted to the faces of his employees, the engineers, the designers, the countless workers who trusted him to lead them through storms. They had families, 2 families who depended on the company's survival. Anjali knelt beside him, her voice soft but steady. Sundar, this is what they want, to paralyze you. They want you to feel powerless, but you are not powerless. You can choose, and whatever choice you make, you will find a way to carry its weight. You always have. Before Sundar could respond, His phone lit up again. It was another message, but this time it wasn't from the mysterious number. It was from his mother. 3 simple words that shattered him completely. He is fading. The room blurred as tears filled Sundar's eyes. He gripped the phone tightly, his knuckles white. The timing was cruel, almost inhuman. Whoever was behind the threats must have known his father's condition was worsening, and they were using it against him. The advisor spoke quickly, his voice urgent. "Sir, the board expects you in the morning. They've already leaked rumors to the press. If you are not here, they will move against you. I must be honest, they are waiting for you to fail." Anjali rose to her feet, her own eyes wet with tears, and looked directly at Sundar. "And if you're not there for your father, you may never forgive yourself." The silence that followed was suffocating. Every second felt like an hour, every thought like a storm colliding inside him. Finally, Sundar stood. His hands shook, but his voice was steady. "I will not let anyone else decide my path. I will not be a prisoner of fear." But as he said those words, the lights in the office flickered back on, flooding the room with harsh white light, and standing just outside the glass wall as if they had been waiting for the lights to return, was the figure again. This time without a mask of shadow, it was someone Sundar recognized. Anjali's gasp filled the room. The advisor's mouth fell open. Sundar's own heart nearly stopped as he whispered the name. Sundar's breath caught in his throat as he stared through the glass wall. The figure outside was no stranger. It was Arjun Menon, one of his longest-serving executives, and someone he had once described as the backbone of the company. Arjun had been with Google almost as long as Sundar had. He had shared late-night strategy sessions, celebrated victories, and endured failures at his side. Sundar had trusted him with projects worth billions, had defended him in board disputes, and had once even invited him to his home for dinner with his family. And now, here he was standing like a shadow in the night, holding messages that threatened to tear Sundar's life apart. Anjali whispered in disbelief, her voice breaking. "Arjun? Why would he?" She couldn't even finish the sentence. Arjun opened the door slowly, stepping into the room with a calmness that felt chilling. His eyes, once warm and full of loyalty, were now sharp, calculating, unreadable. He looked at Sundar not as a friend, not as a colleague, but as if he were an obstacle in his path. "Sundar," Arjun began, his voice steady but cold. "You can't have it both ways anymore. The board is restless. They've been losing faith in you. They see you as distracted, too focused on being the good man instead of the strong leader. Tomorrow will decide everything. If you stay here and lead, I'll stand beside you. But if you leave now, if you fly to India, you will lose this company forever and I won't protect you." Sundar's jaw tightened, his heart pounding. "And the messages? The threats? Was that you?" Arjun didn't flinch. "I warned you, in the only language that would make you listen. You've always been too emotional, Sundar, too human. But this company, it doesn't need humanity. It needs strength, decisiveness, someone who will put the company above all else. I gave you the choice, family or company, because that's the choice you've been avoiding for too long." Anjali stepped forward, her anger breaking through her fear. "You think threatening his family makes you strong? You think manipulating his pain gives you power? You've lost yourself, Arjun. This isn't leadership, this is cruelty." But Arjun's gaze stayed fixed on Sundar. "Call it whatever you like. Tomorrow the world will see who you really are. If you leave, I'll make sure the board sees it as your betrayal. If you stay, your family will know you chose ambition over love. Either way, the mask comes off." Sundar's mind spun. The betrayal cut deeper than anything he had felt in years. This was a man he had trusted, a man who had walked beside him for more than a decade, and yet here he was, deliberately tearing apart the two worlds Sundar had fought so hard to keep in balance. His phone buzzed again, and with trembling hands Sundar looked at the screen. It was another video call from his mother. His father's face appeared, pale and weak, his lips barely moving. With what little strength he had, he whispered, "Don't forget who you are." The call ended abruptly, the screen going dark once more. Sundar's vision blurred with tears, but his resolve began to harden. His father's words echoed in his mind. He knew that choosing family over company, or company over family, wasn't the real test. The real test was whether he could stand true to himself in the face of impossible pressure. He turned back to Arjun, his voice calm but firm. "You've made your choice, Arjun. You've chosen fear, manipulation, and betrayal. But I will not lead that way. I never have and I never will." Arjun's face darkened, his calm mask cracking for the first time. "Then you'll lose everything." Sundar stepped closer, his eyes locked on Arjun's. "No, I may lose a title. I may lose a company. But I will not lose myself. And I will not let you decide my future." The tension in the room was unbearable, thick enough to choke on. Arjun's fists clenched, but before he could respond, the advisor returned, his voice frantic. "Sir, it's worse than we thought. The board has already scheduled a press conference for tomorrow. They plan to announce your replacement if you don't appear. This isn't just about staying or leaving. It's already in motion." Sundar's chest tightened. The walls felt like they were closing in. Arjun gave a small, cold smile as if he had expected this all along. "You see, Sundar? The choice isn't coming tomorrow. The choice is now." Anjali grabbed Sundar's hand, her voice breaking with desperation. "Then choose, Sundar. Please, choose. And don't let anyone else control this moment." The air was electric, every second dragging like an eternity. Sundar looked at his wife, at the advisor, at Arjun, and then at the dark phone screen that had just shown him his father's fragile face. His heart felt like it was being ripped in two, but deep down, he knew he couldn't delay anymore. Slowly, with a deep, steadying breath, Sundar picked up his phone again. This time, he didn't hesitate. He pressed the screen, making the call that would change everything. The phone rang once, twice, then connected, and the words he spoke in that moment left everyone in the room in shock. The room fell into stunned silence as Sundar's words echoed. "Prepare the plane. I'm leaving tonight." For a moment, no one moved. Anjali's grip on his arm tightened, her eyes brimming with both relief and fear. The advisor's face went pale, disbelief written across his features. And Arjun's jaw clenched, his calm mask shattering into something darker, angrier. "You're throwing it all away," Arjun hissed, stepping closer, his voice low but sharp. "Do you realize what you've just done? The board will crucify you. Tomorrow morning, when you're not here, they will announce your failure to the world. The headlines will read, 'Google CEO abandons company during crisis.' Do you understand? The damage? You've signed your own downfall." Sundar's eyes did not waver. "Let them write whatever they want. I can rebuild a company, Arjun. I cannot rebuild time lost with my father." Anjali's chest rose and fell, her heart pounding. But for the first time that night, she felt a flicker of pride. This was the Sundar she knew, not the CEO, not the man crushed by impossible choices, but the son who had never forgotten his roots, the boy who had grown up in a small home with nothing but big dreams and the quiet strength of his father to guide him. The advisor stepped forward, panic edging his voice. "Sir, please think about this. If you walk away now, everything you've built could collapse. The board is ruthless. They've been waiting for a moment like this. Arjun's right. They'll use it against you." But Sundar shook his head, slowly. "If my leadership is so fragile that it collapses in my absence, then maybe it was never real leadership. I've always believed leadership is about trust, about inspiring others to carry the vision forward, even when you're not in the room. If they cannot see that, then perhaps they never saw me at all." Those words cut through the air like a blade, silencing everyone. Arjun's expression hardened further. His voice dropped to a growl. "Then don't expect me to protect you. If you walk out that door tonight, I will stand with the board. I will make sure they see you as weak. I will make sure they never forgive you." Anjali stepped forward, her voice sharp. You've already betrayed him, Arjun. Nothing you say now changes that. But Sundar simply turned away from both of them. His mind was already made up. He packed the envelope with the threats into his bag, grabbed his jacket, and walked toward the exit with Anjali by his side. Every step felt like walking deeper into the unknown, but his heart told him it was the right path. The night outside was colder than he expected. The black car waiting at the curb hummed softly, headlights piercing the darkness. Sundar slid inside, his wife beside him while the advisor lingered behind, torn between loyalty to his CEO and fear of what the board would do in the morning. As the car pulled away, Sundar's phone buzzed again. It was his mother. He answered quickly, his voice trembling with urgency. "Amma, I'm coming. Hold on. Tell Appa to hold on for me." His mother's voice cracked. "He's waiting, Sundar. He keeps asking, 'Where is my son? Please come, fast.'" Tears blurred Sundar's eyes and he pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the car window. The lights of Silicon Valley streaked past, but he barely saw them. His mind was already thousands of miles away, in a small hospital room in India, where his father lay fighting for life. The car raced toward the private airstrip where the company jet awaited, but Sundar's thoughts were interrupted by another message from the unknown number. "You've chosen your family. Now watch your company burn." A chill ran down his spine. This was no empty threat. Someone, maybe even Arjun, had orchestrated this moment to ensure no matter what he chose, he would pay the price. When they reached the airstrip, the jet stood gleaming under the floodlights, its engines already humming. Sundar and Anjali boarded quickly. The pilot saluted him. "Sir, we are ready to leave at once. Flight path cleared. 12 hours to Chennai." Sundar nodded, settling into his seat. Anjali placed her hand over his, her eyes searching his face. "Are you ready for what comes next?" He exhaled slowly. "I don't know, but I know I'm going where I need to be." As the jet lifted off, leaving the city lights behind, Sundar felt a strange mix of fear and relief. The company, the board, the press, all of it would erupt in chaos by morning. But at that moment, none of it mattered. All that mattered was a frail man lying in a hospital bed, waiting for his son to walk through the door. Yet even at 30,000 feet, the storm followed him. Halfway across the ocean, as the cabin lights dimmed and Anjali drifted into restless sleep beside him, Sundar's phone buzzed one last time. This time it wasn't a text. It was a video. He hesitated before opening it, his heart pounding, and when he did, his blood ran cold. On the screen was a live feed of the boardroom back in California. He could see Arjun sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by board members. Arjun was speaking, his voice clear and sharp. "Ladies and gentlemen, Sundar has abandoned us. Effective immediately, I propose we move forward with his replacement." Sundar gripped the phone tighter, his jaw clenched. The betrayal was now complete. The jet touched down in Chennai just as dawn broke, the sky painted in soft shades of orange and gray. Sundar had not slept a moment through the flight. His mind was pulled in two directions: the betrayal unfolding, thousands of miles away in California, and the fragile threat of life holding his father in a hospital bed nearby. Every second felt borrowed, every breath heavy with urgency. The car that awaited him sped through narrow streets, still waking from the night. Shopkeepers were just lifting shutters. Children hurried barefoot to school, and the smell of chai brewing at roadside stalls filled the air. It was the city of his childhood, alive with the same rhythm he remembered, but Sundar could barely see any of it. His heart raced as he pressed his palms together, silently praying his father would still be there when he arrived. Anjali squeezed his hand. "You're almost there," she whispered, her own eyes tired from the journey. Just hold on." The car screeched to a stop in front of the hospital. Sundar leapt out before the driver could open the door. He rushed down the corridor, guided by his mother's tear-stained face at the end of the hallway. When he saw her, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing. "He's waiting for you, Sundar. He kept saying your name all night." Sundar's chest tightened as he walked into the dim hospital room. His father lay surrounded by machines, his breath shallow, his skin pale. Tubes and wires made him look more fragile than Sundar had ever seen. For a moment, the man who had always been his pillar seemed almost unrecognizable, but when Sundar leaned closer, his father's eyes flickered open and a weak smile spread across his lips. "Appa," Sundar whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm here. I came." His father lifted a trembling hand and Sundar clasped it tightly. Tears streamed down his face as he felt the frail grip. "I didn't want to leave you alone," Sundar continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. "I had to choose between the company and you, and I chose you, because nothing matters more. Not Google, not titles, not power, only you, only family." His father's eyes glistened, and though his voice was faint, it carried the weight of wisdom. "You chose right. Remember, Sundar, success is not what you build, but who you stand by." Those were his last words before his eyes closed again, drifting into unconsciousness. The monitor beeped steadily and the doctors hurried in, assuring Sundar his father was stable but needed rest. Sundar sank into a chair, clutching his father's hand, relief and grief crashing into him all at once. For a few precious hours, the world outside didn't exist. There were no boardrooms, no headlines, no betrayals, only the soft rise and fall of his father's breathing, and the comfort of knowing he had been there when it mattered most. But the world has a way of catching up quickly. By evening, his phone was flooded with news alerts. Every screen carried the same headline: Google CEO Sundar Pichai absent during crisis. Board moves to replace him. Beneath the words were images of Arjun addressing reporters, his face calm and authoritative as he spoke of new leadership and a stronger future for the company. Anjali placed the phone in front of him gently. "They've already declared you finished." Sundar stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned it off. "Let them. I've already made my choice." Yet deep inside, he knew the story wasn't over. People could strip him of titles, of power, of prestige, but they could not strip him of his values. And values, he believed, had a way of shining through the darkest storms. A day later, as his father slowly recovered, Sundar received an unexpected call. It wasn't from the board, nor from Arjun. It was from a group of senior engineers back in California. Their voices were filled with emotion.